The Federal Bureau of Investigation's FBI can be manipulated by a mafia boss to cover up his illicit activities. Hey there, dude. The entrance to Theater 1 has been unlocked. My story this time is based on a movie called Black Mass. Source material for this film comes from a real-life Boston Mafia case. As a powerful, uncompromising mafia figure, this man will rise to the level of a terrifying figure. But this man was able to concoct and utilize an FBI agent to carry out each and every one of his crimes. More than that, we shall see how the chain of events gave rise to Boston's most powerful mafia. On top of that, the film is based on a real story of a man with the brains and intellect of a dreadful mafia boss. So, without further ado, let's get into the introduction. We get a feel for the mood of the FBI interrogation of Kevin in the opening scene. Kevin is going to detail the crime that Whitey Bulger, the film's protagonist, committed. Due to his extensive criminal record, Bulger was widely recognized as a major mafia figure during that era. To the point that the FBI was also used as a tool, and all of his operations were successful up to 1975. Back then, Kevin's job description called for him to protect patrons at nightclubs. Kevin attempted to stop other gangs of individuals that night who were trying to storm the club. However, Kevin lost to the group since they were outnumbered. Bulger, who was inside with his buddies, attempted to flee when he heard a ruckus, which allowed him to witness the altercation between Kevin and the others. Kevin was unexpectedly taken up by Bulger the following day. Aside from that, Kevin, the one who defeated him, had been in the car before. Kevin had a twinge of fear that Bulger would assault him after reading this. But Kevin had a different take on all of that. The man was defeated by Bulger, who then challenged Kevin to a match of his own. After that, Bulger impulsively attempted to enlist Kevin's help. Following Kevin's acceptance of the offer, they proceeded to Bulger's residence for some fucking. People in his vicinity knew and respected Bulger, and he had a solid reputation to boot. It would appear that he was formerly the leader of the youth group there. Colonel, an FBI agent, is also a close buddy of Bulger's. Still, Connolly holds Bulger in high esteem because of all the times Bulger has aided him in the past. Next, we'll see Bulger's younger. Billy's brother. Billy is an official in his community. Later on, supper is served at his house by the Bulger family as well. Billy and Bulger appear to have a strong bond. The news that Connolly had become an FBI agent was even relayed by Billy. This evolves. Bulger and Connolly eventually meet. During the encounter, Connolly warns Bulger to exercise caution since a mafia group is plotting against him. In addition, Connolly requests Bulger's help in apprehending a major mafia figure in this area. Since cooperation with the FBI would have consequences, Bulger is not acting irrationally. Now we're back in the present. An individual named Motorano is currently the subject of an interrogation. During that time, Motorano gained fame as a hit team. Some of his opponents he even dispatched. Everything shifts. One is depicted at a bar in the scene. Tommy is irritated because he is at odds with a law enforcement official. Tommy then makes the threatening threat to murder the officer. But Bulger finds it objectionable. When it was aired in the pub as well, Tommy, who was already drunk, felt insulted, and the two of them were on the verge of fighting. It was revealed that a man named Motorano Marto was in charge of the executioners in the South Boston area. The action then shifts to the present day, when Mart is being questioned during that period. Historically, he says, Boston was a very disorderly place. The Italian Mafia was one of the two major criminal organizations. Afterwards, Bulger and his co-workers, including Mark, are seen making their way to a location. As punishment for Tommy's treachery, Mark nonchalantly kills him. People were aware of the river that would later serve as a burial site for Bulger's victims even back then. Additionally, Connolly attempted to persuade his superiors to let him and Bulger go after the Italian mob, specifically Angelo's, but they were denied. It was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to catch the big bad mafia, according to Connolly. However, his bosses attempted to use his demeanor as a reason to reject the idea. Connolly persisted in his efforts to persuade the boss. Can I accept that Connolly was given a condition by his boss not to do narco boys and murder? Whitey, please. Here Molly finally met Bulger. Bulger went on to tell Connolly the game to make it seem like a business. Bulger wanted Connolly to keep his actions a secret, of course. Although Bulger was cooperating with Steve, he continued to inform his FBI partner of this. This was a business opportunity, according to Bulger, who also promised to be able to finish off Anguilla. Steve first declined, but Bulger persuaded him otherwise, and now Steve supports Bulger's plan. When Bulger got home from the battle, he discovered that the child was unwell. Consequently, he gave his wife the go-ahead to rush their sick child to the emergency room. The Bulgers, along with Billy, Connolly, and their wives, held a joint supper. Not long after that, Bulger's wife called to break the terrible news that their son was seriously ill and in the hospital. During an altercation with Lindsay, Bulger proposed returning his child to his home. Contrary to Bulger's wishes, Lindsay could not agree. They got into a heated argument because Lindsay apparently blamed Bulger for everything. However, Bulger jumps to the present when he messes up the hospital chair at the end and blows it up. Motorano, portrayed in the moment, will go on to discuss the Bulger incident, which will eventually become a Boston crime ward. The incident in which Bulger's son died occurred after this. Everything has changed now. He jumps to 1981. At this point in time, Bulger has sunk so low that his organization is collapsing, and he has even become a narco boy dealer. Maintain a steady flow of operations, on the other hand. Use one since Bulger was still free to roam as a criminal up until this point. Connolly superiors requested updates on the arrest of Anguilla. Connolly promptly responded to this. Connolly encouraged Bulger to locate Guillermo's headquarters immediately so they could meet. If it weren't for Bulger, Connolly would have no evidence to support his crimes. Connolly was immediately given requirements by Bulger to dismantle the money-making machine. Its duration was brief. The following day, Julius had a cannoli and received exactly what he wanted, demonstrating with great enthusiasm that his informant was more than capable of answering the FBI's inquiries in order to apprehend the Anglo Mafia, so silencing Charles and his other FBI agents and acknowledging that Connolly's efforts had not been in vain. Ignoring the question, why did Bulger do this? Why? Because Bulger could never have gotten away with any of the crimes committed by Whitehill Content without Connolly. For 5 years. The Ewing in this city, there is an organization that will select a single individual to head up its operations. A guy by the name of Wheeler. John Callacor was the previous head of the corporation. Because of their history of collaboration in the dirty business, John Callacor arranged a meeting with Bulger. When Callacor needs Bulger's assistance to kill Wheeler, he turns to him. For the reason that Wheeler is going to sabotage Callacor's business. Callacor had already set aside a sizable sum to cover the cost of the Bulger even before that meeting. On top of that, a guy called Brian was present. The Bulger even went so far as to give Brian a sack of cash to keep quiet about what Bulger's gang is planning. From the looks of it, Brian is a decent guy who works hard to keep costs down. It came out later that Motorano, the executioner, had already put an end to Wheeler's life in a specific location. Brian was terrified that he, too, might meet the same destiny as Wheeler as a result of this occurrence. To that end, Brian contacted the FBI on his own initiative after the murder. He had been an ambitious, self-made businessman all along. It had come to light that Connolly was the one who would question Brian. Connolly took a stand with Bulger and attempted to corner Brian during that moment. All of these places gave Brian's troops, especially Maurice, the creeps. Brian had informed Bulger to the FBI, and Connolly wasted no time in informing Bulger of this. Bulger responded quickly. Specifically, murdering Brian just after the incident he had caused. After Brian went to the FBI, Charles became enraged with Connolly for going beyond the bounds of what was permissible due to Bulger's actions. Simultaneously, the FBI obtained substantial evidence that led to the arrest of Willows and other high-ranking mafia figures. The FBI will be sufficiently sidetracked from Bulger as a result of this. After that, Bulger wasted no time killing the collector and amassing all of his wealth, further enriching himself. Everything changes. Because Connolly changes into someone other after frequently intersecting with Bulger, the scenario depicts how his wife feels something unusual and different from her husband, which is why she dislikes Bulger. And then, at some point thereafter, Bulger had to say goodbye to his dear mother. After Bulger lost the individuals he cared about most on multiple occasions, you could see the anguish on their faces. Adding insult to injury in terms of Bulger's future actions. I return to the present. In 1982, the year in which Bulger considered the arrest of Anglos a success, Motorano recounted the story once again. A man named Carl approached Bulger at some point and later on, stating that Bulger wanted a huge quantity of intelligent weaponry. Following Connolly's many successes, Bulger's mafia all but agreed that he was prepared to help make this dream a reality. It resulted in his promotion. However, a new officer by the name of Fred was recruited by the FBI. Officer Fred has a reputation for being forthright and honest. Bulger despised his people who interacted with the police, so Steffi later met her boyfriend, who had recently left the station. Steffi, the builder's girlfriend, was murdered by him. What Bulger was doing was hurtful enough to Steffi for this to happen. Afterwards, Bulger's gang did not have a meal at Connolly's house. It was obvious that Connolly's wife disliked Bulger, so Bulger had to step in and meddle with his wife when he wasn't there. To keep out of Connolly's business, Bulger warned Connolly's wife. After a while, Bulger established communication in order to work with an Irishman on a weapon smuggling operation. Everything shifts. Near Fred, Connolly makes an effort to get near. His goal is to gain control of Fred. Fred, though, is clearly the type of person who is unconcerned with the feelings of others. Following this, Connolly attempted to get Billy to remove Fred from his position at the FBI office. Billy was wary of interfering with Bulger's affairs for fear of undermining his candidacy for public office. On the flip side, there's one less consequential piece of information. The FBI is working with an informant to uncover details regarding the real Bulger. As it turns out, the informant did disclose a few anomalies. Whatever. Dean ignored it. As we all know, an FBI agent had leaked word of Bulger's weapon smuggling ship to local authorities, so hearing that on the news must have made him feel lightheaded. Then Connolly attempted to reassure Morris that he shouldn't freak out because the situation was spiraling out of control. On the other hand, Morris' actions were unaffected. Fred was informed by the FBI headquarters that his informant had lost information while probing Bulger. He began to wonder whether something was off with Bulger because of this. Bulger had tortured and murdered Fred's informant, it comes out. Morris came clean about his observations of Connolly and Bulger's relationship afterwards. Because word got out in the press that Bulger was an FBI informant, the story had a significant effect on him. The mafia's deep-seated animosity toward informants made this a major issue. By the end of the ordeal, Fred had compiled a list of Bulger's victims. Concerning Bulger's criminal activities, Fred persisted in gathering information. Connolly has recently come to terms with the fact that Bulger has taken advantage of him in this scene, and he is disappointed. Everything here is a business, Bulger says. It was later discovered that Connolly had conspired with Bulger, leading to his arrest along with Steve. But before he left, Bulger gave his younger brother Billy a call to say goodbye and tell him to be careful. While interrogators like Kevin and Motorano were granted mercy, Bulger remained well recognized and managed to evade capture until 1995. Connolly resigned after receiving a 40-year prison term for his interactions with Bulger, which led to accusations that he lacked integrity. Billy was appointed chancellor of one of the campuses as a result. Along those lines, it took the authorities a while to track down Bulger, and when they did, they handed him 2 life sentences in prison. It is also true that Bulger was murdered when he was a prison inmate. The film has concluded.